Hi, welcome to one of the first episodes of Libby Means Business. I'm Libby Kavalakis. I'm the business coach with Pivot Transformational Business Coaching, and I'm so excited today to have Gordon Sumner on. He goes by Colonel Sumner, Dr. Sumner, but I just call him Gordon. And this is an amazing leader unto himself. He was an Army colonel retired. He ran a big office at the Pentagon as one of his accomplishments. He started Veterans Moving Forward to provide service dogs. He worked in business and just overall across the board, just a wealth of knowledge and kindness. So I'm so thrilled to have you on today, Gordon. Welcome.
Hi, Libby. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for the kind words.
Absolutely. Did I get anything? Do you want to add to your introduction at all?
No, just thrilled to see you. You're a dear friend, and to have me on your podcast, it was very exciting. Been looking forward to this morning, and then to hear that I'm one of the first, I'm honored, very honored. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, fun fact, Gordon and I used to meet for drinks in Washington, D.C., and that was one of the best places to have conversations was happy hour.
Yep, and I miss those. You need to get back down here so we can have our wine date afternoons again. So I miss that and the conversation. So let me know when you're down.
Oh, I will. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that too. So today's topic of discussion is leadership. And, we all think we're leaders. Everyone talks about leadership in the abstract, but I want to bring the topic down to really what is a leader and how is it applied both in the workplace, nonprofits, in even the military community, and really what makes a good leader and probably what makes not a good leader. And you've seen it in all those different environments. What do you think leadership is?
Well, there's been numerous studies, PhD dissertations, no telling how many military doctrines have been written and tried to be implemented about leadership. In fact, the Army even has kind of almost like a leadership 101 manual that they give to cadets and to soldiers. But to me, leadership really just boils down to being able to take people, a group of people, or even a singular person, and have them accomplish a mission together where everybody is on the same sheet of music and they understand the importance of what they're doing and be able to bring that out from them as to how they can be part of that solution, part of that mission that you're trying to accomplish. And getting everybody to kind of get in line and work together towards a single cause, I think is the mark of a good leader.
Absolutely. And that's a tough thing to do because everyone comes in with their own agenda.
Yes, it is. And when and there's a different way of doing it. There's different styles. In the military, it's very easy. You're the commander. The commander's intent is to do X, and everybody gets behind the commander and salutes and moves out. But I've seen this over where a lot of people who have been in the military, especially senior non-commissioned officers and warrant officers, that they are so used to that when they get into the civilian side of the house, civilians don't operate that way. I mean, no. I can't come up to Libby and say, Libby, this is what we're going to do. Now go do it. And you're going to look at me like I got four eyes. It's like, what? I'm not Sergeant Libby. You don't tell me what to do. And that's just in the business arena. Now you swing into the nonprofit world.
Holy cow! Yeah,
volunteers. That is a whole different scenario that you got to do. You have to learn how to speak. I call it speaking volunteerese.
Oh,
language unto its own. And how do you get volunteers to understand their importance, their role? How do you get them to become what I call true believers in what you're doing and why you're doing it and how important it is that they come along as true believers to help you accomplish that?
And then I would think in the volunteer world, it might be a little easier only because people volunteer for causes that are dear to them. They're not forced into the volunteerism. They're there because they want to be.
There is some truth to that, but remember what you said at the very beginning, that a lot of people come with their own agenda.
Mhm.
Well, that is a major issue in a lot of volunteers, especially when they come into leadership roles. Or you have people who never really held primary leadership positions. And then suddenly they're thrown into that, or they volunteer for that, and they kind of let it go to their head. I'll give you a case in point. One of the last organizations I was privileged to lead when I was in the federal government was quite large. It was the only volunteer-based, volunteer structured organization within the Department of Defense to accomplish our mission. And how big was that? I had over 5,000 volunteers that worked for me. And those volunteers were located in every state and territory that we had. So you can imagine the difference in people, cultures, traditions. Even though we spoke English, the difference of languages from somebody in Florida versus somebody where you are in Pittsburgh versus somebody in Guam. Um, and you had people who had been senior officers, for example, some 2-star generals, 1-star generals, and admirals that had retired, and now they're taking on a 2-star equivalent protocol position as the state chair of that organization for their respective state or territory. And there were some serious egos out there when I took over. And when I basically said, okay, folks, here's what we need to do, here's the direction I'd like the organization to go, I had some of them that was like, yep, no, that's fine. You just go do what you want to do there in DC, and I'll call you if I need you, kind of
Yeah.
deal. And it's like, no, that's not the way this organization is going to work. And, egos got in the way of some of them. And I had to thank them for their service for many years, and, let them kind of walk into the distance. But a lot of that is just because, and what was the fallout of that is a lot of the volunteers saw that.
Yeah.
And they understood that we needed unity of effort if we were really going to make the organization work. And we didn't start off with that many volunteers. In fact, we had whittled the numbers down, did some house cleaning the first few months I was there. So we really only had about 1,700 volunteers that were actually logging hours that we could prove that we're doing something for the organization. And then when I left 2 or 3 years later, we were up over 5,000. So we must have been doing something right.
Oh, I remember the organization very well. And I know you were doing something right because I remember the ceremonies and I remember some of the highlights that you were able to share during that time.
Yeah.
And we won't mention it, but it's such an important organization that, again, you would think that people who are interested with that would have come with their ego aside, but it never happens.
No, it doesn't. And you're right. I remember a few of those wine dates that you and I talked about, how I would commiserate and you would just sit back and you were very nice and listening, and then offering some sound advice every now and then, just if nothing else, just to hear some of the challenges. But honestly, and all said and done, I didn't realize how much fun I was having until our daughter came home while she was in college, and it was during the holidays, and we were just sitting there watching TV, no conversation, and suddenly out of the blue, she just said, "Hey, Papa, you know what?" And I said, "No, what, sweetie?" She said, "This is the happiest I've seen you since you retired from the Army, with you in this job that you've got." And she was absolutely right. I loved it. I loved getting up in the morning, loved going to work, loved traveling, meeting all of the staff and volunteers. Yes, we did have staff. We had military uniform staffers. We had government civilians. We had defense contractors in every state. So, it was a very large organization. But the leadership piece of it, back to that, was being able to talk to everybody to get them to understand why I felt it was important that they were part of this thing. I traveled to all 50 states, and I hit 2 of the 3 territories in Puerto Rico. So I felt it was important because of the staff, again, primarily volunteers. They heard directly from me, the director, national director, as to why I felt it was important that they participated in the organization. And so for me, I would tell everybody, look, I just want you to know that I can't give you a pay raise. I could give you 2 zeros, I can't give you any time off because you're volunteering, so you can leave whenever you want to. But the most important thing I can do as a leader is to look you in the eye, shake your hand, pat you on the back, and say thank you for what you're doing. And
Yeah.
that was worth its weight in gold. Uh, just to hear from me how I felt, because I wanted them to feel part of the organization. If there was a challenge ahead for that particular group, I wanted them to feel that they were being heard, that their ideas were being heard, and that they could be part of the solution to make the organization move forward and be better.
And that's so important, right? Getting the buy-in and having people know that they're appreciated for what they're doing and understanding really what the playing field is.
Yeah,
You know,
it
that's
is.
part of just corralling people and moving them in the singular direction.
Yeah, I mean, it is because with volunteers, you realize the number of hours, that literally thousands of hours that they're putting into the organization. I would tell them, I said, look, the reason I really appreciate it because I realize that this isn't the only thing that you've got going. This isn't your thing by and large. You could spend the same amount of time in other organizations, your church, your synagogue, wherever that you would like to serve and support, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Boys Club, doesn't matter. But you're not doing that. You're doing it with this organization. And so I want to make sure that you understand and how much I appreciate you doing that. And the same thing when I had the service dogs.
Yeah,
Exactly the same mode when I had the nonprofit providing the service dogs for veterans nationwide. It was important for me to tell those volunteers how valued I appreciated what they did and how I enjoyed what they were doing for the organization to make us successful in providing these life changing and life saving animals for our deserving veterans and their families across our country.
absolutely. You know, I've seen we part of what we were commiserating about because we did overlap. I was a chairperson for a national memorial in the DC area. And I could relate because I was the second chairperson after the original chairperson who would not give up power, who she didn't want to be chairperson anyway, but she wanted to kind of lurk in the background and cause trouble.
Hmm.
And it was no matter how much you try to bring some people along on a new vision or a refined vision, you know, same vision. We want to build this memorial. We want to get the 20, right? 80% of the people bought into it. 20% were just hell bent on causing trouble. And
Hmm.
trying to overcome that and explain that happens all the time. It happens in business too. And that's what, you know, a good leader will kind of hold steady on the vision, but try to continue to work to bring in some of the other people.
Yeah.
Did you see that in some of your positions as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I do now that I retired from the service dogs and I've started back my service disabled, veteran owned, very, very, very small business because it's just me and Native American small business. And so I focus with nonprofits, but I also help some businesses if they need it or would like me to come in, especially in helping to facilitate their strategic planning, their team building, their leadership councils, whatever they want to call it. Because one of the things that I've learned over the years, at least for me, is that doesn't work well is when the boss says, I need to have all my directors or all of my staff come in and we're going to sit down and we're going to plan how to make the organization better and I'm going to lead it. Well, as soon as you say you're going to lead it, everybody says, well, he's already coming in with a preconception about what he or she wants to do,
Yeah,
how they want to do it, where they want to do it. I mean, there's really it doesn't portray that there's any wiggle room,
right.
right or wrong. Everything is 90% of everything is built on impressions, and so I've seen over time and time and time again for organizations, be it for profit or nonprofit, is that as soon as the boss says this is what we're going to do and I'm going to lead the charge, everybody's like, well, just tell me what to do and I'll get in line and off we go. And there's little to no input. So what I like to do is come in and work with the organization, find out what they do, get a little information, do some sit down with the staff and say, well, this is some of the things that the company is looking forward to. What do you think? What's your thoughts? What's your experience? And start gathering all those things to kind of put together a kind of a precursor for the leadership to say, here's what's coming from the trenches, because you want this
Yeah.
to be kind of a bottom up review and planning. And have that, again, going back to what I mentioned some time back, having every member feel that they can be part of the solution set. So then I facilitate, make sure they've got very definitive goals. What are their definitive takeaways from spending this time together? What is it that they want to achieve, and how do you mark it? How do you measure it? It's all got to be metrics based.
Yeah.
So that at the end of that session, they walk away with something that's now valuable as well as operational. And when I can transfer all that to those teams, I think they do a lot better if they continue to carry it out. And most people leave feeling like they had their opinion heard. Whether or not it's utilized, that's a different topic. But at least they had their voice heard, and I think that's what also builds teamwork in an organization.
Yeah, that sounds so familiar because I would do organizational reviews and process improvement for federal agencies.
Hmm.
And there was one that sticks out because they had gone through like 3 different reorganizations in the past year and had gone through a few different deputy directors, and the workforce was shot. They were just burnt out by the drama and the chaos and the lack of leadership.
Hmm.
And the number one thing we did was we interviewed every single member of the staff, sometimes in groups because it made sense, sometimes individually, but people just wanted to be heard. And they were they were very honest and very upfront. We assured them of confidentiality in what was said, but the fact that someone actually asked them to speak to certain issues was astounding at that point because of the dysfunction that was around that agency or that specific office at that time. Everyone is important, right? Everyone gets a voice. You may not have a say, but you get a voice at least.
Right. And that's one of the key elements in a military background that you learn, especially as you get up to battalion, brigade, command level, is you have what's called the commander's intent. But then you have a staff of people who focus on a key element of that intent, whether it's supporting with personnel or the logistics or the overall operational requirements to accomplish that particular mission. And you sit down and you have that input. But I didn't lead it as the commander. I had my executive officer lead because he had oversight for the staff, so more or less. They all worked for me, yes, but
Yeah.
he managed all that going on with the staff and the coordination pieces between the staff elements. So they all came together. They all threw their, as I would call it, 2 cents worth in with change. But at the end of the day, they all had their views heard. The good points, here's what's good about it, here's what's not good about it. And then at the end of the day, responsibility still relied with me as the commander.
Absolutely.
So you can't delegate responsibility, it's still there. And so I delegated authority. They had the authority to do whatever within their respective lane, as we call it. But I never, and a good leader will never delegate responsibility.
That's
And that
right.
and so that translates into, again, for profit, nonprofit, political environment. If you're a political leader, you can't delegate responsibility. You accept the choices that you make, you accept the votes that you made, and you accept the statements that you make. And if you find out a few years later you were wrong, you admit it and you move on, and you'll have a better viewpoint with your constituents if you admit that you were wrong than trying to cover it up. And so I just thought I'd throw that in for what it's worth. But again, that's where I think I've taken all that and moved that into the business world, and still tried to use those strong points that I grew up with that were successful for me in my career.
Absolutely successful and absolutely help mold the man that you are today. But you're right, about the politicians. Remember about like a month or 2 ago, there was, I think out of New York, New Jersey, somewhere perhaps, a congressman who actually stepped forward and said, I made a mistake about gun control. I made a mistake and didn't, I voted against this. It happened in his district, something happened in his district. And he
Mhm.
just came out and said, I made a mistake. I'm changing my vote going forward. I'm now supporting these laws. And that made news, which was crazy that that little bit of integrity or that little bit of self-awareness that he
Yeah.
could see that he made a mistake now that the circumstances had changed or he had evolved personally, made national news for a couple days. And it was that astonishing that someone would actually have the courage to come out and admit an error
Yeah.
because we're so programmed.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all
Especially
perfect, right? Can't admit failure. That's weakness.
one of the key points about leadership is I don't know that I buy in that people are born leaders. I think it's a characteristic that you may have somewhere in there that you then develop
Yeah,
when you add your values to that and you add a few other things. But I think good leaders learn from good leaders, and good leaders learn from bad leaders.
yeah,
I mean, we all don't live in this utopia world, and all of us have had leaders, people placed above us in positions of authority that we identify as not doing the right thing or saying the right thing or acting the right way or whatever. And while those were uncomfortable experiences, we all have had them, you learn from it. And so I say to everybody, just if you get lucky and you have nobody but good leaders your whole life, wow, good on you. I haven't met
exactly.
anybody yet. Now, I have in all my life, when I do these lectures at wherever or discussions, podcasts like your great podcast this morning, I I've never had anybody come to me yet to say, "Oh, you know what? I had great leaders my whole life or my whole career or whatever." I'm like, "Wow, good on you." Nope. But we all learn, and we learn from that. My daughter is funny to listen to her going through her military career now. She's now a major in the Air Force, and she's had some pretty rough times with some individuals. And every time that she gets through it, I said, okay, so what did we learn over this tour or through this operation or whatever? And I mean, she just opens up. Yeah, well, I'll never do this, or I'll always remember that, or whatever. And I'm thinking, yeah. And you know what's going to be great about it is that your airmen that you're going to command or serve with or operate with from now and into the future, they're going to be better off because of what you just figured out. So good on you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you need the bad to be able to appreciate the good.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and also to see what not to do, because I think that too, I think you can develop leadership just by the circumstances that you're faced with,
Yep.
because then you have to really start thinking about who am I really? What do I want to accomplish? What do I stand for? How do I want to be treating people? How do I want to be treated? You go through all these different questions that really boil down to what is my character and how am I going to conduct myself? And
Yep.
when you see people who are just awful, just awful, and you're like, that is not me. I don't want to be that person, but you learn from it. I
Yep.
mean, there are a couple companies I worked for that um just amazing cultures, just fantastic cultures. And then, I had come out of a organization that didn't have a good culture. And so seeing the difference in both of those and seeing the how people reacted to volunteer for things, reacted to working harder, reacted to meeting financial goals was night and day. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yes. I have noticed that there are a lot of business coaches, hint, hint, that are really coming up and doing well in that arena. It's not something I wish I'd have thought about it about 20 years ago. I
Yeah.
think I might have been good at it. But yes, I know 3 or 4 people like yourself that are great business coaches that can come in. You're concerned about the individual, you're concerned about the business, but the nice thing about being the I don't have a dog in the fight business coach is you can tell the emperor that they're naked
Yes.
or the old adage goes. So that's why business coaches can be worth their weight in gold, like you are.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I seek to be. I really do want to help my clients, and I'm fortunate enough to have had a huge range of experience and have faced so many different things, much like you, that gives us great perspective. That's a lot of it is what do they bring? What can you bring to the table, not just on coaching um, methodologies, but also from your lived experience, because that really helps other people understand the context as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Gordon, we're just too wonderful, aren't we? Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny, Libby, that people they look at my resume or they see me on LinkedIn and they say, "Wow, you've got such a distinguished career. You've done this, that, and the other." I said, "No, if you really boil it down, it just means that I'm old. I've been around a long time, so I've had time to do a lot of stuff." So
Well, it is true though. When you look at your resume, it's like, oh my gosh. But to me, you're always Gordon Sumner, one of my favorite people, one of my best people I had the opportunity to meet in Washington, D.C. And you I won't make fun of Auburn football. You won't make fun of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we can all happily coexist with our differences.
yeah, we still pull for each other. That's for sure. I got to tell you, there's not a Pittsburgh game that I don't see or hear about. The first thing I think about is you wondering if you're in the stands moaning and groaning, or if you're at home moaning and groaning, or if you're cheering or whatever. But yeah, our time will come. Our time will come for both my Auburn Tigers and the Steelers. We'll be back.
We'll be back. That's right. That's a whole different leadership issue, isn't it? Keep on talking about that leadership.
Gotta stay positive.
I'm a fan. Can't get rid of me. Good times, bad times, I'm a fan.
Yeah, me either. No, I'm actually.
I want to thank Gordon Sumner, leader extraordinaire, for coming on the Libby Means Business podcast. And we'll put up information on where to contact Gordon if you want him to step in and help your business with leadership or any type of coaching. And I'm Libby Kavalakis with Pivot Transformational Business Coaching, and I'm here to help as well. Have a great day, and thank you so much, Gordon.
You're welcome, and happy holidays to you and everybody out there.
Okay, I'm going to end the recording, but we'll stay on the line.